Welcome to Win-Loss Week. Today we have an awesome panel for you guys on how to diagnose and improve sales team trouble areas. Our awesome panelists today, we have Jared Robin, co-founder of RevGenius, Asia Corbett, the head of revenue and community operations at RevGenius, Dale Zwinski, VP of North American sales at BZ, and Jordan Henderson, the head of revenue operations at Ring DNA. Jared, I will turn the time over to you.
Bailey, thank you so much. And thank you for having us. I was able to invite three awesome leaders in sales and RevOps to this panel, also members of RevGenius, and want to thank Clozd for allowing me to do that, to participate in Win-Loss Week. We're so amped, and I stacked the panel in the favor of getting really, really good answers from awesome leaders. So, Clozd shared with us three top reasons that sales teams influence winning or losing deals, the top three. So these reasons were pulled from their data and win-loss programs they run for companies. And the top three reasons, which we're gonna dive in and ask the panel questions today, are: one, sales empathy and communication; two, sales process and follow-up; and three, demo quality, sales knowledge or expertise. So we picked these three reasons. I'm going to jump into Q&A and open it to the floor for these wonderful individuals to jump in. So let's start with sales empathy and communication, something really big. And we picked it because community and empathy and it all vibe together. But the first question I have for y'all, and we could start with how we're introduced, Asia, Dale, and then Jordan, and then next time we could do the reverse. But how do you make sure your sales team truly understands the problem their solution solves? This is awesome. I'm curious to hear your feedback, everybody.
So I think that comes down to enablement and training, and really making sure that your onboarding and continuous training of your team is well thought out and executed. I'm of the belief that enablement falls into RevOps anyway, which may be somewhat controversial, but having a strong enablement program and then tools for your team is key. So that's how they understand what they're doing, is you provide them materials to ingest all that knowledge and easily access it.
And I'm going to build off what Asia said. So it's funny, I've gone through many organizations and have had conversations and built teams. And while the traditional enablement is good, I think where we're missing a lot of things is in the objection handling. So I think if we go from, if you take the enablement piece and then forget about stacking your product on it, like you're going to learn your product, solution, service, anytime, any place. Like you're going to hear it over and over and over again. So forget about that part when you're doing the enablement and actually put objections. So we're recording objections and how customers are dealing with objections, or how we're dealing with objections in the best case scenario, and then enabling on the objection versus enabling on the product or solution.
Totally. Yeah, I think to sort of like circle back, the reason it's important to understand the problem your solution solves is so that you can be an empathetic seller, right? So I'm not just understanding how my product works, I'm understanding the problem it solves for people so that I can then show empathy to them in the problem they're experiencing in the moment, right? Which makes me a better seller, makes my sales team a better seller. So the two easiest, like immediately actionable things that I like are, if you can use your own tool to solve that problem internally, right? If your sellers can use your own product to actually experiment and experience solving that problem for themselves, great, absolutely do that. That's not always the case depending on what you're selling, right? So then the second like sort of easily very actionable thing to make sure your sales team really understands it is call recording and conversation analytics. 100% you need to be recording these so that your sellers can go listen to a library of phone calls where a prospect explains to you the problem they're experiencing, the impact that has on revenue, and how that's messing up their day-to-day life and ruining their business, and how your product solves it and helps them make more money and makes their life easier.
Yeah, I love all of that. I would actually add something to that, build on that. How do you understand? Well, speak to customers that bought in the last 45 days. What problems did they have? This is your product today, right? We're all in early companies that evolve over time. Your product 2 months ago didn't solve everything, but today it's evolved, right? So like, how is it solving problems today? How are problems today different than they were, right? You know, there's things that evolve every single, your prospects have problems today they didn't have a year ago.
Right.
So like understanding this in real time is big.
And they might be using your product to solve a problem that you didn't even know they were solving with it, right? Exactly. Because people get creative and use things for all new ways all the time. And you could imagine every way your product could be used, some customer will come along and use it in a wildly different way that's successful. And you should know that. That's super helpful for you to know.
Yeah, that's awesome and really great feedback, y'all. So now, what methods do you use to make sure your sales team is communicating to the buyer that they understand them and know how to solve their problem? So we understand all the potential use cases, but from a communication standpoint, would love for you to unpack that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest one for sellers, and I'm sure everybody does some training on this. If you don't, you should. Reflective listening. It's so important, right? And it's important not just to show you understand the problem. It's important to actually understand the problem and empathize through reflective listening with them. If you haven't done reflective listening and actually use the methodology, then go learn that immediately. It is the most powerful way to show that you understand the problem that you're helping solve and mirror the language back to them and actually reflect the value that you can add.
Yeah, and just to add on to Jordan a little bit, just asking better questions. So I think a lot of times when we're going through the process, we have a philosophy or a thought process that we know what the problem is that the buyer's trying to solve because we've been trained. Like we sell on a daily basis. Our buyers only buy once every 3 or 4 years, depending on if you're an enterprise solution or not. So we're selling on a daily basis. So we think we know what the buyer's problems are versus saying, ask better questions to get better answers. And I find in general, most salespeople are afraid to ask hard questions because they don't really want to know the answer, because they want to put it in the pipeline to build their pipeline up. So if they ask harder questions up front, or they kind of get through that process, one is you create much better credibility with the prospect. Like you're much more high in the ranking. And the second one is like you can help them through the process. Maybe they're not the right fit for you guys, and you can just move on, and you don't have to waste all your time. But salespeople have that problem of not asking the hard questions.
You mean, Dale, you mean sellers put things in the pipeline that shouldn't be in the pipeline?
All
Is that
the
what
time.
You're saying?
That's why I'm stuck in the middle of the two RevOps people, because they're like, this stuff does not fit in the pipeline.
I would echo Jordan and Dale on this, since this is definitely more sales focused, and Jordan is a previous sales leader and Dale is a sales leader. But if you think about what empathy means and understanding where people are coming from and putting yourself in their shoes, that makes total sense. Asking better questions and being reflective so that you can, go back to that and putting yourself in the buyer's shoes and thinking about what they, where they are, and how you can use that to understand solving their problem.
Yeah, and go back to listening and active listening. How many of y'all here have been on a sales call where somebody's selling you that they're going on their path and you're just like cutting the you know what, and they're not taking, like, you're like, okay, this is a non-starter, but and then they go like, makes me want to scream, right? So just like if you're going a certain way and it's like, okay, I'm selling FedEx, like we have at 3 p.m. we need somebody to come to pick up 2,000 packages, and you're like, well, FedEx is better than UPS because no, can you meet my operational need? Like, or not, right? Like, cause I get it, I'm bought in that you're better, but you also come at 2 p.m. and 300 packages have to go the next day, which takes an extra 24 hours to get there. My customer service load is this, and this. Well, FedEx is better.
Yeah.
No, like,
Yeah.
listen, like, oh, maybe we could do this. Go off the beaten path, understand if it's an objection or a condition, right? Like, is this going to be like a non-starter and really work? And then, check back in and make sure. Anyway, that's my 2
Yeah,
cents.
it's like we've all. I don't know if you guys have done this, but I buy a lot of software. Obviously, evaluate a lot of software. Especially if I've ever said to you, "You're not answering my question," you're in a really bad space, right? Like you should. If I'm asking you things or like going into something, and like you said, like I have 3,000 packages that I need picked up at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and you're like, "Well, our trucks have the best mileage." Like, how does that help me, right? Like, great, like that's awesome, but like you're not answering my question. My question was pretty specific. I want to know the answer to it. And if you need more information to be able to answer it, that's fine. Ask me those questions, explain why you need that information, and then come back and answer my question because I asked it for a reason, right? Meet me where I am.
And the FedEx example is obvious, right? Because there's packages of stuff, but a lot of times the hiccups are nuanced. Like, we use a Webflow platform instead of WordPress or something like a little off, or like we've been using Stripe for whatever. And it's not as obvious as like, oh, this or that. Listen deeper, right? Like, oh yeah, we only integrate with Shopify stores. I guess we can't use Magento, or we have to think outside the box.
And dig into the why behind it, right? Like layer the questions in. Like, why is that important to you? If I'm saying I need these packages picked up at 2 p.m., like, okay, why? Like, what's the reason behind that? What's dig deeper? Why does it have to happen at 2 p.m., right? And then again, it's super easy example, but that also shows me you're listening. If you're asking me detailed questions about the reason behind my desire to know something.
Yep. And you get to the point faster. And it's awesome. I had an awesome call today where somebody was looking to partner. It's separate from what we just spoke about before. And I just cut it real quick. And he's like, well, you put me on my heels. I'm like, we have this big conference going. And to this gentleman's credit, he pivoted, was like, okay, this is what we could do. Hearing you out quickly. And in a minute and a half, he put out the best empathetic response I could have got. And let's just say, like, we might end up working together because he was like that. And it was just like, it was an amazing experience. And I was about to save him time, like right away, because I like realized it. But yeah, anyway, okay, so we have this space now. We've talked through it. Now let's enter technology. What are your thoughts about technology enabling or maybe getting in the way of salespeople truly connecting with buyers? The $1 million question. Let's start with Dale.
Yeah, I mean, technology is always going to enable, but you have to be careful. I think the challenge we're having with a lot of the sales tech is there's overlap in a lot of these sales technologies. So you have to kind of pick a path and go with it, and then stop layering on top additional technologies. Like, okay, I'm going to get this technology, but it's got a little conversational intelligence. And then you go, layer on like a gong or a chorus or like whatever it is. So you're layering it on just to get like incremental value. But then all of a sudden the salespeople like don't know where to go. They don't, like, we're just implementing some technologies now. And the challenge, even at a lower level, because we don't have a huge tech stack, but it's like, well, where do I go to put in this? Or how do I do to go to put that in? And so as you're onboarding people, you want to make it super simple, because then once again, it's not only empathy to the customer or to the prospect, but it's empathy to your sales team. Like a lot of people go through this process and like, well, we need the data because we got to do the reporting. We need to do all of this stuff. But there's got to be a point where you individually manage the sales team and coach them. Not everyone's great at everything. And so it's not this blanket statement. So you have to have the empathetic and communication even in your own sales team, so they know exactly what to do where, so you can get the information and the data that you need. So I think it's definitely useful. I think it can help connect with the buyers if you do it in a way that is personalized and you're not just randomly sending spam out and sending people in cadences. And like, I'll give you an example. I'm looking at like LMS systems and different conversations, and I knew somebody, I reached out to them, but I'm still getting pinged by the BDR that's coming out of SalesLoft or Outreach. Like, it just keeps sending me emails. So I just politely sent an email to the BDR and copied the account executive in. And I was like, I think I'm already talking to the sales rep. I don't know why I'm getting these emails, and like, oh, I got a flood of emails like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. But that's where technology can actually put you in a bad position if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, automation done right is an incredible thing. Automation done bad is a terrible thing, right? Like there's sort of no in between in automation, right? But totally agree with your point. I was talking to Andy Paul actually this morning of the Sales Enablement podcast, and we were talking about Yoda, which is RevGenius real-time sales enablement. It like essentially pops up notifications on the screen that say like, hey reps, this person came in via this lead source and has this job title. Here's some potential questions that you should ask them. And there's a balance there, right? Because obviously that is a very powerful thing. But there's also the risk that if I start over programming that, my reps become robotic and they're no longer showing empathy, and they're no longer like meeting the buyer where they are and asking questions and doing things, because they're just asking what's popping up on the screen. So to Dale's point, like it's a great guide and it's really powerful and really helpful to keep people on track and get the things in that you need. But it's never going to replace the human-to-human sales enablement component, which is teaching reps to actually show empathy and understand the problem they solve and work with buyers to really be, like a partner to them, which there's definitely a balance there.
Totally. I'm going to touch on the operational piece of this because I have very, very strong opinions around sales operations and revenue operations and technology in particular. And I think if we zoom out of this for a second and think about what is the process behind the technology, like scrap Salesforce, scrap HubSpot, Outreach, Gong, whatever, really think about your sales process. What are you trying to support there? Then think about layering the technology on top of that. Like it should be the bottom up from your go-to-market process, then the internal business process, then add the technology, then drop the people on top, rather than saying, okay, I need to get conversation intelligence and get that to my reps. I need to get a tool to do sequences and get that to my reps so they can follow up. Take a step back and really think about the processes you're trying to support first, and then go for the tools, because it's usually the other way around. And then you're trying to jam your processes into this tech stack that you've built that the processes don't fit. Like the stack doesn't support the processes. So it can definitely get in the way of salespeople, but first, before the technology, even think about your process to enable them.
Seems like you have some real-time opinions on that, Asia.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lead in. We're going to go into the sales process. So,
but it's a super important note though, because especially if you're sort of building this from the ground up, right? If you're just building out this process, you've probably got a little bit of technology to buy, right? There's a few things you might have to put in place, like a marketing platform and a CRM and some sort of routing software and outreach platform, like RevGenius, Sales.com, whatever, conversation analytics, all the above. You're probably not going to do that all at once overnight. You're going to prioritize that in some way, shape, or form, right? So to Asia's point, yeah, totally. You got to identify the process and then identify what's the most valuable piece of this for you to implement first and start there.
Yes, so I do have some, to Jared's point, I'm very open about this. We're using a CRM that I'm not a huge fan of.
She's messaged me this privately on Slack to tell me this, just so you guys know.
However,
we're winning more than we're losing for Clozd win-loss week, FYI.
However,
because Asia's helping us.
When I removed my tool bias, because we have our favorite tools, of course, and I'm like, well, our process, what tools, so I inherited what we have already. Like I didn't build anything from the ground up, and I'm like, okay, what is Jared's sales process? I don't need to cram that into HubSpot or Salesforce because it's not going to work. Like that's not what we need right now. And so I said, all right, fine, I concede. We'll use what we're using now, because that supports this current business process.
Well, and we're talking founder-led sales where the founder is doing a lot of other tasks. And I think this is an important takeaway, and this is an extreme example of building from the ground up, right? Because like sales is 50% of my day, 30%, 70%, like it changes depending on the day. And I need something flexible. And we won't go into the CRM world, but like we have an option that allows me to move faster because that's what our needs are. So it supports our needs now. Is it the best thing for build? Come on, there's no chance of this. But like right now, if we use the best thing, it slows us down to the point where we can't scale like we need to right now. And that's very real. And that's very real time. So Asia's done a phenomenal job. Thank you. Like, and I was ready to do whatever Asia said, as I always am, because her thought process is truly amazing.
Thanks. Thank you. So, I did concede on this one though. I said, all right.
I conceded.
So
I actually conceded, and then she conceded that the way we were doing it was right. I'm like, you're right. like we brought you on because you know a million times more than us. You're right. She's like, well, actually, you were right.
Yeah. It's so to Dale's point, having empathy also for your internal team is very important, especially as you're designing processes, as you're choosing technology and how it will enable your team.
Well said. Yeah, you can't have 15 reps all listening to their own recordings if there's only one person above them, you know, and that's a whole nother product, but like that's tough. So sales process and follow-up. Let's go into this sector now. And let's start with Asia. What are some strategies used to make sure your sales team follows up properly? And don't say yell at Jared.
Ping them incessantly on Slack and ask if they followed up. No, so from an operational perspective in other organizations I've been in, really leveraging your tools here and process to take the administrative load off of reps as much as you can. So that looks like if a lead comes in, automatically assigning them, right, with your lead routing tool, whatever that is. Creating some sequences for them out of the box, work with whoever writes the content and put that together so that it's automatic. And then you can put in the steps that are automatic and the ones that are manual, so it doesn't feel like a robot is reaching out and it's like Dale gets 3 different messages from 3 different people. And then again, back to that enablement piece, this tool called Guru that I love and I will talk about all the time because it makes it so easy for people to get access to really quick resources and information. Pop open the Guru Chrome extension. You have your other screen up, Outreach, Salesforce, whatever, and look for what you need, a call script, a battle card, and then open it up and it's right there side by side on the screen, then you close it. That allows them to follow up really quickly instead of pinging people in Slack and asking, hey, where are the whatever sheets?
Awesome. I'm going to go super tactical on this, but into the sales funnel a little bit more. So Asia was talking a little bit on the front side of the funnel. As we get into it, fundamentally, where I see most reps fail, and it's super simple, sending some recap letters. Like as soon as you have a good conversation with somebody that has value or has data points in it, send a recap letter, say like, let's align, let's set our expectations properly, and do it from like the get. Like as soon as you're on a conversation, a demo, like write down all the information. And it's a bit self-serving and people don't realize this. Like they get super tied into this and having action items at the bottom with the signs and dates and just having some of the data in place. Because what ends up happening when you're in the field as a rep, you may take 4 or 5 other calls. It may be a week and a half before you touch base again. And you're going to forget that information within 24 hours after you have that conversation. So it's a bit self-serving because then you can go back when you get the follow-up call and go to your recap letter and say, oh yeah, this is what I talked about. Or if you're going to bring someone else in, whether it's a tech resource or a leader into the conversation, they can actually read the recap instead of going to listen to a call or going through all the process. They can kind of do it at a high level. And as a leader, I can go in and say, oh, did you get this information? Or did you get that information? And any of the gaps that may have been not filled through the recap letter. And I just think it's super simple and people just don't do it. I don't get it. Every company I've been to, I have a template, I have a format. I do it every time. I did it when I interviewed. Like I do it all the time because I just have so many things going on, I forget. And the customers totally appreciate it. Now, 98% of the time, 95% of the time, they won't even respond to it. But and sometimes I'll put wrong information in there just to see if they're reading it. Like I may put something that's totally off base and I'll be like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, at least you read it. So super tactical, but I think, in the process, super fundamental. And we're trying to get super fancy with all this automation and all this other crap. Like get down to the basics.
So what in there do you put wrong? Do you say like, and just so you know, we agreed to a 3-year
spells
deal.
their name wrong.
No, we agreed to a 3-year deal, and you wanted to close by this Friday so that we get it by the end of the quarter.
You could do something super silly like that, or you could be like, you're a 5,000 person organization, you put 50,000, or like something kind of off base, so it does stand out a little bit. But then they'll respond to you, and at least they read it.
That's
and they're responding to you.
Kind of genius, actually. I think to get people to dangle it to read. I feel so guilty. I'm over here like, oh my gosh, I take demo calls and then I don't respond because I'm so busy.
You know what?
So on the other end of that,
But I have to tell you, people sell me all the time.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the fraction of people that send me, like, I'll give them information, I don't get anything back. I'm like, screw you. I just spent a bunch of time and you think you're going to get any more of my time? Not worth it.
And we Dale, we do something similar here, but we call it a challenge email because the intent of it is essentially challenge what their assumptions are about their business, right? Like let's take everything you've said to me, recap it, and then let's like challenge you to solve it. Like that's the idea here, right? I would take that to sort of the next operational step as a RevOps person, and we meet with our reps. We meet with, more our senior sellers, but some of our junior sellers as well, and sort of analyze what their day-to-day looks like. What are they doing all day? How are they finding leads? How are they booking their meetings? How are they tracking their follow-ups and doing all that sort of stuff? And then we make them dashboards so that all of that stuff is right there. And it's super important that all that data ends up in Salesforce so we can do this. But when I mean a dashboard, I mean a rep logs in, opens a dashboard, and they have, here's your 4 meetings that you haven't sent a challenge email from. Boom, click those, do it. Hey, here's your 9 opportunities that haven't heard from you in 6 days. Boom, do it. Here's your 12 contacts that you need to call because they opened an email in the last 24 hours, right? All that is right there and it's ready to go for follow-ups, but making it really easy for them to manage their day so they can worry about selling and not worry about, do I need to go to this list view or this list view and like blah, blah, blah.
And so I'm curious, why just the senior sellers? Why?
So we actually do both. A lot of times we'll start with the senior sellers because they've got a refined workflow that's allowed them to maximize their selling time. And we want to sort of train the newer reps, the more junior sellers, into a similar workflow so that they can maximize their selling time. Because reps that have been around the block 5-6 years, they know how to make sure they're selling 6-7 hours a day, right?
Sure. Well,
yeah.
I don't know about that, but
hopefully.
No, they're more efficient at you not knowing and hitting their numbers. So that's a whole other story.
Right. But
what we did in the big Fortune 100 that a lot of the people listening might not have the ability to. We had SQL, service quality levels, and essentially we had call lists every month where we had to hit 80-90% of them. And that was a combination of opportunities based on opportunity size. And we were full cycle and also account managers, really, right? So like we also had based on the amount of business they're giving us, like just touching base. And there might be something here for the audience that upsells, right? Like in that has, it's not just give everybody a CRM. Well, even give everybody a CRM, there's upsells there, right? So just having this cadence that you go in, and then when we had our performance reviews, yes, of course you have your number to hit, sure. And you have the activities to get along the way, right? Like, so you might have your quarterly, your half, or your annual number. And you want to be able to hit 7 of 12 monthly numbers as well as like a second thing. So 50% of your performance metric was based on hard numbers, and 50% was soft activities to get there, like just the activities, right? And part of that was this follow-up thing where you were expected to do like 90% or whatever of this. Understanding that some of the people in your territory went out of business. This is also like reaching out, right? So it's not just following up, but it's also touching base. Oh my God, they went out of business. Get them out qualify them out. You're anti-incentivized on the quarterly basis, which, by the way, that's how you got your raise, your 3 or 5%, not just based on, you know, hitting goals, like that was that matrix. And yeah, okay, you can't get to 90%. Got it. Get the accounts out that are causing you there to have a clean, crisp territory. And if you didn't, you know, so it helps practice all sorts of good things. So 50%, getting the activities to hitting the other 50, and understanding, you know, the reason why 50-50, and granted, certain industries with bigger margin and more expensive employees might be different, and I get that. But it was just fully buying into your process. If you buy into the process and you don't hit this 50, you're going to still have your job, right? Like, and you're going to still chug along because we get that much input in the process versus wild westing it. You didn't hit your numbers and like just, you know, those pipeline meetings, the errand ones. And I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but in follow-ups, actually having a goal towards it, like a 90% goal, that also had like touches in general to people that were qualified a certain way. Opportunities, obviously priority, but even people that were allowing you to qualify accounts with potential that might not have been opportunities yet. That was big too, because you have to touch base and follow up and cadence all of them as well. Really created, you know, a company that started, you know, part of got like a 30 or 40 year handicap catching up in light speed against a proven commodity, right? So take that for what it's worth. I'll always go back to those examples. My early stage examples are what gave me the grit, but the process are before that. So anyway, in your opinion, what does is there a perfect sales process? If so, what does it look like?
There isn't. I mean, like, sort of blunt answer, I guess. There is for every product, right? Like it depends. It's company to company, product to product, feature. Like the sort of perfect sales process isn't just a uniform glove that we can all put on and you know, walk away from. It's going to vary company to company, product to product, and it's going to change at those companies over time as you identify different problems you solve and different ICPs, and your sales process changes, and you roll out new products and new features, and like it's an ever evolving thing at each company that needs to be essentially mapped out wherever you are. It's not an answer. It's a way of saying no, right?
I'm gonna say something a little controversial, especially to this group of RevOps people. I actually don't think there's a sales process. Yes, don't get me wrong. There is a sales process. You gotta follow stuff, but
what?
Best manager ever.
But it's really about the buying process. Like the perfect sales process maps to the buyer's buying journey. Like period, end of subject. Like I don't care what your sales process looks like. The customer could care less what when your quota is, when your close dates are, when you need to like hit this deal review. Like they don't care when your contract's done. Like they only care what their buying process looks like. So the only perfect sales process, once again, Jordan, I think you hit it right in the head. Like I've now done this probably for 4 or 5 different companies and some friends that were starting things up. It's different. It's different everywhere. There's no like, I'm going to follow Medic or I'm going to follow this process, Miller High, like all these different things. Like there's goods and bads of all those, but you have to look at individually into your organization. How do you sell? It could be enterprise or transactional or, you know, somewhere in between. And what do your salespeople look like? And what are their attributes that are going to be successful? And then you map that to the buyer's journey. Once again, the seller sells every day. We sell every day. Like we're doing it all the time. The buyer only buys like every once in a while. So when you ask them, like, hey, let's go through the buying process. And I'll give another tactical example here. We do what's called joint engagement plan. So you map out everything all the way to when the customer goes live. So it's not the close, because that would be a close plan. You go all the way down to when the customer gets value. Once again, we have to flip our perspective on things and stop talking about sales and internally and what we're doing and how we're doing it. And like you, as a buyer, you want to feel like you're in someone's sales process. You want to feel like you're in your buying process. So put it on its head. And then the joint engagement plan is owned between both the your organization and the buying organization. And inevitably what ends up coming out is they have no idea what their buying process is because they haven't done it in the last 4 years, and they have to go through the process and they don't know what the sign-offs are. And like we get to the end of the sales process, and like you find out like there's a team of people that have to sign off, and it's got to go to the CEO, and the CEO's daughter has to approve it. Like you get these weird things that happen. And so I think, there's no perfect sales process that you're saying. I think it only is a buying process, especially today.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I mean, meeting your buyers in their process starts at marketing.
Yeah.
And it never ends. It actually never ends. People always say it ends at deal close. It never ends because your customers are still buyers.
Not in SaaS.
Absolutely are. Yeah, exactly.
In perpetual 10 years ago, 5 years ago, absolutely.
Yeah,
today,
not now.
And this is going to be also probably controversial. I actually think the CSM is more important than the salesperson in the longevity of a company. So, and that's coming from a sales leader, right? Because, because the reality is the things that kill SaaS companies the fastest are churn. And so if marketing and selling is selling things that either aren't getting delivered or you're not seeing value, then the customer just churns. Like you may have gotten the front end of it and you spent a ton of money bringing them in the door, but it's easier if you keep them throughout the process, which is why selling and marketing with integrity is super important.
I think I just have to say, hey, salespeople and CS people from my company, if you're listening, I love you both equally.
I love them all. I think from an actual revenue generation, company longevity, valuation perspective, like if we're talking, everyone in the company should care about valuation. If you care about valuation, you care about churn, and the CS team needs to be able to make sure that they're churning. And guess what? The account executives are just as important in keeping the customer on board. Even if they're not in the day-to-day, they should be in at least at a high level. This is enterprise as well, going back to transactional versus enterprise, into is there upsells? Are there problems? How are the problems getting resolved? Because the CS team should be the good guy and the sales team should be, the bad guy, if you put it that way. Because if you get your CS team into these motions of having to give bad news all the time, then you're going to get churn no matter what.
Totally.
Go ahead, Asia.
Asia, you're up.
I don't really have anything much to add other than, yes, operations folks are very process driven and process oriented. However, it is true that you should start with the buyer's journey and then put the processes on top of that. The whole go-to-market process from marketing all the way through CS, and sales is just a piece of that, but it should very much align with the buyer's journey. So the perfect one is individual for each company, and it varies, like Jordan said. And yes, I also believe CS is one of the most important functions. I have been in the CS shoes now, and I will say, like literally as a CSM, Jared knows, and I respect CSM so much more. Not that I didn't before, but man,
and trust me, sales is tough. Sales is tough. Like to get someone on the hook, in the door, all the way through the process, like that's tough. And so is the other side. Like if you put them in a quadrant, like 4 quadrants, right? So the seller sells to the decision maker, the CSM aligns to the user, right? So they're actually 4 different quadrants, and they all have their own individual requirements. So the decision maker thinks they know what they want. The user is using the product or service. So the challenge is the expectations are not aligned in the 4 quadrants.
CSM knows more of the use cases empathetically than the salesperson does in general as well. So like the salesperson knows all this, the CSM comes in and they're like, oh, yeah, this is what we did for that last unicorn. Like, what? You can do that? That's definitely happened. And for sales processes, and I'll keep it quick here, I call it acronym selling. Enter whatever acronym because it gives you a process. I don't want to like go into the tangent and say like, is this just to create a business for the acronym creator? But the reason why we adopt is because it's a process driven. A lot of them are logical to an extent for your business. I remember I had a manager once that made us put BANT in Salesforce and made us check everything off. And I'm literally calling nobody in my territory did, okay. Nobody did under 75 million a year in revenue. Okay. 25% of my territory did between 75 and 100. 50% of my territory did between 100 and a billion, and 25% over a billion. Why the F am I having a B in band, like with these true enterprise deals? Like, do you have budget for $140,000 product? Find
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a lunch bill.
I'm like, why are we doing? And then I'm able to go down to 75K. If they don't, like, this is silly. I'm talking to Sears, asking them what rest their soul.
I was gonna say,
Jeez.
you probably
Now
did need to
you're
ask that
dating yourself,
question.
Jeez.
Jared was an AE when. Got it. So we'll move on to the next.
Last time Sears bought anything was a long time ago.
Wow, talking about Jared prospecting. Okay, that dates me. Anyway, let's go to demo. We know your thoughts on automation. Build it with the process, start with the process and layer it on top. But what are some of the strategies you use to make sure you're let's talk demo quality, sales knowledge, or expertise. Okay. So we have the sales process, we have the follow-up, we have empathizing. But now what are some of the strategies you use to make sure your salespeople become experts? Let's start with Asia on this one.
Oh boy, I'm going to say training and making access to the training really easy and building it into their onboarding and ongoing training. And I probably will plug in Guru again because it's so easy. I mean, like all three of those questions, you can build out resources, a resource library to enable your team and your the managers to also use those resources to train the team with all of the knowledge and make it really easy to access. This is the one time I will say like the tool first and not the process, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so I have a super big problem with this, and the reason why is because I've never seen a demo win a deal. I've seen demos lose deals all the time.
Yep.
It's a checkbox. It goes through the process, and so you got to make sure you're not losing the deal through this process. But the other challenge I have with this particular statement or question is when you state it like this, people always go to my product, my solution, how I work, what are my feature functionality. And like, if I hear feature functionalities one more time when I'm like talking to somebody and they're not trying to figure out what my problems are or where I'm going, I'm going to throw up. Like, it's like so sickening through the process. And I don't know how to fix this besides we ask questions like this that really like push people towards feature functionality. And I get it. Like you get into you're a salesperson, like you got to love your product. Like I have the greatest wing ding bang. Like who cares? It's your thing. And so I'll go back to what I said originally, which is focus on customer objections or the questions, like listen to calls and see what the questions are that customers are asking and get those down. Like what are the top 5 or 6 questions customers are asking? Maybe they're not objections. Maybe there's questions like, hey, how do you do this? Or where do you do that? And get those down. And then if you can hone in on those, you're going to figure out your product and your feature functionality. You're going to hear it ad nauseum. So we just have to be super cautious when we talk about this stuff. And I just want to switch it to us focused to them focused.
Right. Yeah. The most important part of the discovery, right? Like as here's a demo, I'm going to show you some features and products. That's not helpful for anybody. You might get lucky, 10% of the time. The rest of the time, it's going to be like, yeah, I don't care. You didn't actually solve my problem. So do good discovery and focus your learning how to demo, because you're going to have to demo at the end of the day. But how you demo should be certified against the problems you solve for people, right? Yeah. Because it's not just here's a bunch of features. It's here's the way we solve that problem. That's how a demo works.
Exactly.
And that's why the most important part of a demo, you should never demo before you've done an adequate discovery. And if you're ever on a 30-minute phone call and you get 15 minutes in and they're like, great, can we see it? Absolutely not. Like, no, you cannot see it right now. I'd love to set up another time. But like, if I show it to you right now, I'm not ready. Like, it's going to be a feature dump, and that's a waste of everybody's time.
And I see that happening more and more. And the buyer's pushing so much because they're going through like this process. And so like, this is where if you're asking better questions, like if a customer is asking me that, like, I want to see a demo. And then I'm like, okay, why do you want to see a demo? And then they're like, well, because I want to see your features and functionality. Yeah, but I'm not prepared to show, like we just talked about A, B, C, D, E. Is that what you want to see? Yes. Well, let me schedule another time so we can actually set it up and set it up properly. No, but I don't have any more time. I want to do it now. Well, it's not going to be a good experience for you. And, you know, we just both wasted 30 minutes of our time. Like we as salespeople need to start pushing back. Like we're becoming like the sales concierge for people because everyone's so afraid of like pipeline and numbers. Get the right pipeline, the right numbers in, and do a little bit more pushback. Guess what that has to do? If you do that, you actually have to do more front loading and do more prospecting and get more into the process. So you got to stop being lazy. Like we have to stop being lazy and we have to actually do that work up front so that we can build proper pipeline to close real business.
Totally. And if somebody says to you, I don't have another 30 minutes to do a demo, great. The problem must not be that severe for them, right?
And,
like if they're not giving you the time,
no opportunity. There was never an opportunity there. So
you
cut
could
it short.
Challenge them, try to help them identify that this pain is actually real enough that they need to take the time to do that. Push back, get them to the right place. If they still won't do it, then yeah, the pain isn't big enough for them to want to solve this problem with your product.
And by the way, one of the biggest problems salespeople have is they're afraid to say no and they're afraid to push back. And you get all the way to contracts, right? You get all the way to contracts. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to give another discount. I need 3 years. You want 1 year. Like if you're saying no at that point, you're screwed. You're so in trouble. Like you got to say no early in the sales process because the buyer is going to continue to push to find out where that waterline is. So
yeah, I think becoming expert in your product, becoming expert in your space, right? Like I'll get on a sales call and be like, what does community mean to you? Right? But knowing that with the product we're selling, knowing they're going to be like one thing, like, oh, we want to partner here, or we want a lead list. We want to just turn, you know what, y'all, that's not us. We don't want you to do that to our members. And then I've had people come back and be like, no, I'm kidding. Community, like hold them accountable, like, because they realize fast that they can't work with you. Right, you're Gong versus Chorus or whatever, or versus Ring DNA.
Nice, thanks. Good recovery.
And Ring DNA is like all of a sudden is like, no, it's not a fit. You realize 33% of everybody in the main room, I can't talk. Okay, got it. I'm gonna understand that if you have a product that you truly believe in, and I get it with like some of the new companies, but like push back. Like I have no problem walking away. Like, why did you send us a proposal or whatever? I didn't think. I thought we left off as not a fit. Like, oh, now you want to start again? Let's re-qualify you for being the right thing. You know, what is, and Asia knows, what does community mean? Oh, it means MQLs and SQLs. See, I haven't even talked about our product at all, right? Like just understanding your buyer. Oh, training means this. Well, if that's how you train your people, you know, where you just call in an expert every month, you make some videos, you make some YouTubes, and you have it. That's not how we operate, and that's not how best to use our product. Are you open to switching that? No, that's how we're going to do. Good, not a fit, right? Could be. How do you get salespeople the resources they need to prove their knowledge and expertise? So we asked about the strategies. How do you get them the resources? Don't all say RevGenius at once, but we could.
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think so. This question's a bit wide and deep, and I'll go a little bit narrow on it because I do think if we stop thinking about ourselves and think outside the box, like I think one of the biggest missed opportunities for a lot of people that I'm talking to now are communities, like these sales communities, marketing communities, learning new things. So yes, do you need resources internally? Yes. Do we have knowledge centers and Guru and all of these other pieces and parts and technologies? Yeah, we use Beezy internally. Like we're an employee engagement platform. We have we sit on top of SharePoint. So we have a whole knowledge base underneath, and we're serving data up all the time so people can find the information. But it's beyond the actual knowledge inside the organization. Like, find out if that person that you're talking to is connected to somebody else that's in RevGenius, that's in some community, and maybe you're having a conversation that is not about the product, but you're having some other higher level conversation. So, you know, finding knowledge isn't necessarily, once again, just about the product. I think when we ask these questions, we have to think outside the box and stop thinking about ourselves. And once we get to that level, it's super hard to flick it too, because when you're a salesperson, you want to talk feature functionality, it's super easy. That's the easy way out. Go beyond that and just think, what are the other things I can do to bring value to the table? Because it's all about value at the end of the day. If you're sending an email and there's no value in that email, don't waste your time. Don't waste your prospect's time. Don't waste their email space. Don't waste the Ethernet space. Don't waste the bits that are getting sent over. It's a waste of time. Like, have value in it, whether it's, you know, a white paper that is associated to what their business problem is, or something that you heard that their CEO said on some webinar. You know, if someone's selling into RevGenius, you can find stuff on Jared all over the place. He talks all the time. So we can find stuff anywhere on Jared, and then you can have that conversation. So I did put that in there, Jared.
Too real. Asia, did you respond to this one yet?
No, I didn't, but this one is definitely more sales focused. So I'm just listening.
You'll sit and chill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those ones where technology is a really great way to do this. Again, you have to be careful, right? It's a double-edged sword, but sales enablement platforms are incredibly powerful. And that doesn't always just mean like a dialer and an email cadencing tool. There's so many tools that help them identify the right marketing materials and identify, you know, like here's the 3 sentences I should be including in my challenge email to this person, and here's relevant content. And it can be things like Zoom Info or LinkedIn Sales Nav that allow them to do the research they need to do, right? Like, putting those things in sales reps' hand and properly training them on how to use them is the most important thing here, for me at least.
Oh, we actually have to train them? And don't just train them like when they come on board. Like,
right, yeah, it's ongoing.
What's this world about? Totally. Like, we're going to train you once and you're never going to get trained again? Like,
oh,
this is an ongoing process,
you've been in sales for 5 years, so you know how to use Sales Nav. You're good. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Like, you got to, like, I actually think sales is changing every 6 months. Like, it's bizarre, the speed at which things are changing. And if you don't know what's happening, it's crazy. Like, and people are standing still and being like, what just happened? Like, they're just like looking behind them. So I think that's there's a lot of good stuff that we talked through here.
Let's bring this to a close. I know you know, we've had an awesome conversation. Having 3 experts here is amazing. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Clozd win-loss week. Hopefully we're helping the audience win more and understand their losses to do better and improve. Thank you all.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.